Hello and welcome back to the Tool Shop. Here's the next video on the dual Raspberry Pi streamer server I'm putting together. And this is my Logitech media server in a plastic case that I showed on an earlier video. And we're going to take it out of here, and there's a couple of decisions to be made. So let's get it out and talk about the decisions and see where we go. So I think it's going to be fairly obvious when we get to this, but can always hope and can always make changes. And sometimes I like it simpler. So let's see what happens when I get this out of this other case. Okay. So in one of the last videos, I mounted this Raspberry Pi and the extender for the micro SD card on one of the little platforms. And that's the one that runs the Squeeze Lite endpoint. Okay, and just as a reminder, what this whole thing looks like from the top. It's like that. Now, there'll be a Pi hat on top of that, and there's not enough room between vertically to put the Pi hat. That's why this little 4 tower is going to be a 2 tower for me. So let's take a look at splitting this up. Oops. You know, I'm a lefty, and I watched the nice lady do the video from the company who supplies this, and she had some of these same problems, so I don't feel too bad about it, but this is only a test. So, and by leaving the plastic film, they fit tight so it doesn't fall apart. So here's the deal. This board with the Pi on it and the SSD on it fits rather nicely there, with plenty of room to spare on that second bay, and I think, or on the third bay, so there's 2 bays. Now, I kind of like this daughter board with the way it works. In a lot of ways, it keeps things free. It adds some complexity. It may draw just a little tiny bit more power, but basically what does it do? Okay, just kind of look at that. So it provides the USB interface to the SSD, and it provides power to the Raspberry Pi through these little pogo pins, which are kind of hard to point out. There's a little pin down inside of here that touches the test pads on the board, on the Raspberry Pi board. And that has always sort of bothered me a little bit. So I'm fussing over that. The other thing that was just annoying, and we have another tilt on this one, is the fact that this doesn't hold the SSD flat. So it's got a little bit of a angle on it there, and I just don't like that. And I have the same sort of a problem on that other one. So I'm going to go ahead and disassemble this the rest of the way, and lose the daughter board, and see how things work. So we'll disassemble this. Lots of little screws. And as a reminder to myself, I'm going to unplug the micro SD card because in my working with Pis, I have broken a couple of those. And while that one, it's not too precious, it's more precious than some others because it happens to be 128 gigabyte one that came with this 8 gigabyte Raspberry Pi. And just so you can get an idea, here's the 4 pogo pins that connect the Raspberry Pi connectors, and you can see how, let's see if I can get this down here, you can see how they compress. That just does not show up well on camera. Anyway, that's what that board does. So this reduces the cost by not using that board. And now I can unmount the SSD. So we'll set this board around and to the side and save it for later. Maybe something else will use it. Just as kind of a little note, here's all the electronics to convert USB to SATA, and that is all contained in this little plastic hunk here on the end of that USB cable. So let's grab one of these boards, it's carriers, and let's first thing get the plastic off of it. Make it easier to see. More of the little laser cutouts. Now, in this case, we're going to mount the 2.5-inch SSD right there where it goes, okay? And it will face out the back like the rest of these do. Now in the kit, they give us some screws to do that, which should be this size here. That looks about right. And one of the things you don't want to do is you want these snug, but you don't want to over tighten them. So there's the SSD mounted to the board, and just to make sure that clears very nicely. The one thing that we're going to want to be careful of, this sticks out past the board, and so you want to be careful here that this doesn't get pushed up or down too much. So this cable dress will be important, and we'll work on that when we get a little further along. Now I'm going to stop here, and the next step will be to mount this other Raspberry Pi on another one of the platforms. I won't record that because it's the same process as the other one, but then I'll come back and we'll record the final assembly and fire up.